order. Let me go through our administrative section very quickly here, and that is essentially our charter, the committee's charter as an advisory committee to the select board. The Bike and Walkways Committee is hereby established to consider ways to provide safe areas for biking and walking. The Board of Selectmen believes that these activities should be available seasonally and year-round, as they are an important means of local transportation, are popular activities in the town, and promote good health. The Bike and Walkways Committee is charged with the following tasks. One, to work with the Cape Cod National Seashore, the towns of Provincetown and Truro, and the Cape Cod Commission to establish the continuation of the bike trail northward into Provincetown, and two, prepare a plan for future bike and walking routes throughout the town of Wellfleet. Public comment, we invite public participation in the meetings, and public input is important to us. So, but in the interest of time, we do ask that comments on any particular topic be limited in time. If you could limit comments to a minute, and if there are lengthier inputs to make, we're available by email, certainly, and the committee email address is listed, of course, on our website. So we have first up on our agenda is an update on the Massachusetts Safe Routes to School program. There has been some communication and some meetings at the state level regarding this. Christy, I know you essentially serving as our representative and working with the person who spoke with us a few months ago. Can you tell us if there's been any progress or activity?
No, I don't have any updates. I did sign this up and do all that, but I haven't done anything since. So yeah, I don't have any updates this
okay,
meeting.
so
I'm sorry to say.
Well, they're continuing to provide information to communities. It seems, but there's not a direct engagement. I know at one point there was discussion about going to the schools locally here to see if they're interested. Have you been able to?
And I haven't. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I wasn't prepared for this. I didn't see the agenda item. I'm sorry, Pete.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll tell you what. Just based on our last meeting, please keep in touch with the elementary school.
Yeah.
This is an important effort within the state, and it's certainly one that I think our town could, take some lead from in terms of understanding priorities to make safe routes for kids, if it's applicable to Wellfleet. And that's really, I guess, our starting point is to determine its applicability, because our town is situated a bit uniquely here. But if there's a way that we can work with the state to look at safe routes to school. I know that in our study of routes, we identified children as being a group that would be underserved by the state's current plan. So it'd be nice to look at alternatives.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say it is applicable to children. I mean, they definitely could benefit from a safe route to school. So.
Okay, well, we'll move on then in the agenda. And if you could, we could talk about this at our next meeting. I know, again, the state is providing a lot of information, and some of this is regarding policy, but others is funding opportunities. So it'd be good to keep on top of that. So on to the next item, and that's Steve. Welcome, and thanks for joining us. Steve Kopitz, who has been following the efforts of the committee and contributing his ideas through our meetings, did some independent research and put together a report, which he provided to us. And there's Steve. Hi.
Hi, good morning, everybody.
Everyone on the committee, of course, has had a chance to review what Steve had sent out. And again, Steve, thank you.
Sure.
So let me, the intention here was not so much a presentation of the report, but for the committee to discuss it in terms of comments and questions that we'd like to provide to you. The fact that you're here, maybe we can have an interactive conversation. So that's great. So I have some thoughts as I read through it, but I want to ask Christy and Ned if you're anything that you wanted to touch on first, or do you want me to just I can go through what I noted?
You could go through what you noted. I did find I agree with Steve that it would be such a primary central destination for tourists and town members. So I really appreciated the numerical way of showing that, because we do need things healthy and beautiful things for people to do who live here and who visit here. So it's really cool to see.
Okay. Any upfront comment, Ned, or?
Yeah, I would reinforce that. I mean, terrific effort there on Steve's part. That to go through all that. It's a very detailed report you have there, and it does underscore how important and vital this could be to the tourism, but also to just our local people bicycling here. So, yeah, great job, Steve. And I think it's going to be. It really helps underscore our efforts to show just how important this could be. So,
Can I add a few comments?
Yeah, sure, Steve.
So thank you. I mean, I'm a consultant. I'm a numbers guy, and that's what I do, right? I do that for a living, so I'm pretty good at it. But some of the interesting findings. I did the report actually because of my brother, who also has a house up here, and he was terrified about people using the path, and that these would be, Mongol hordes and, Russian tanks or something. And I was like, well, maybe this path is not quite as scary as people think it is. And so, I bike quite a bit, and so I took videos primarily at the end of season. So it's not completely representative of a whole season, but it is from sort of late August to mid-September. And the findings generally are, the numbers are what they are there. They're not horrendously bad. A lot of people can use the path and it won't look like that many people. So that's one of the takeaways. The second is the people on the path are the same people who are here. So it's not, if you're not scared of the demographics going down to Wellfleet Marketplace, you shouldn't be scared of the demographics on the bike path. It's literally the same people. Third finding is it's horrifying how old we are. Right. So half the people on the path, maybe more than half, are above 50. Right. So we can now start talking about a geezer path, because it kind of is. And that's an interesting theme, by the way, in a lot of stuff. As we look forward to services and infrastructure, you're gearing this significant portion, even majority perhaps, of your clientele or your users are going to be above the age of 50. So those are the general findings with it. What you'll find, what we would expect to find, is the traffic will fall off as you go north of LeConte Hollow Road for a couple of reasons. Mostly people bike around where they're staying, and Eastham has a much bigger population density than we have. And the second thing is there's not much population north of Central Road, because that's seashore really north of Gull Pond Road. So that the traffic will fall off south to north. So the volumes that we would see, I made estimates of volumes, time of day, but generally will fall off south to north. So it's not such a terrifying thing most of the time. It's going to be people who look like us. Unfortunately, like, they have gray hair too, look like us, and it's not a scary, intimidating, and even with reasonable amounts of traffic, you won't feel like it's huge. And such traffic as there is really limited to that 4-hour stretch, 11 to 3. So those are the basic findings.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Yeah, my as I read through the report, my takeaways were one, you I think emphasized correctly the importance to the community to have the bikeway as a facility, and both for local transportation, but also as a facility for recreation. And after all, because Wellfleet's a destination in many ways, as you characterized it, it would be a suitable bikeway for targeting the needs of the area. Could be the second most popular attraction to the area, following the beaches and ponds. So there is an opportunity there, and it's one we'd hate to years from now look back and see it as a lost opportunity if we don't address it correctly. Another thing I noted, the importance of the bikeway, and this is related, and that's the importance of a bikeway as an asset to the local population. I mean, as you've characterized it, the people who use the bikeway will look like us. And of course, I think what you mean by that is the local population, which has a degree of diversity. I mean, it is, it's an asset to the community. It's not simply an attraction for recreational use, but it would be something that would, that a bikeway properly situated provides connectivity, and it serves the interests of the local population. Now, a lot of those people, local populations anywhere, use a bikeway recreationally, and so we're going to see a lot of that. But yes, it's bikeways certainly are among the most democratic transportation means. I mean, along with public transportation and others, it's something that could be quite an asset for the local community. The third thing I noted was the demographic groups in the area that you noted are important, in particular 50 and older. But another one that we talked about when we were talking about the safe routes to school, and that is minors. Both of those are important elements of the population. I mean, the over 50, because of the sheer numbers. I mean, as you pointed out, Steve, the kids, because after all, we are trying to attract families to the area. And there are families in the area, and we want to serve them well, but also make Wellfleet a place that attracts additional families. And if we're underserving those demographic groups, that's a big impact to the community. So if we're going to be investing resources in a bike route, we want it to be one that will serve the people who live here, and to attract the people who we hope will fill out our community, including families. A concern expressed throughout our report is that those demographic groups are underserved by the state's plan. That the state's plan is, in particular, going to be attractive to a small group that you noted in your report, which I believe you call them the pros, the 3 to 5% who are
not many, but notable.
Not many, but notable, and they tend to be skilled, expensive bikes, etc., and unafraid of road traffic. And certainly some of our committee members can identify, because there's some serious cyclists. So yeah, that's a group that is going to continue to want to ride along the roads. If the bikeway is highway centric, it's going to exclude other demographic groups, including older people. A lot of older people are looking for recreation, and also the youth. And again, there's a state, ironically, the state program Safe Routes to School that we're
not on Route 6. It isn't. No.
There you go. Enough said, right? So yeah, I just think that's and then that leads to an overall impression I have, which is that the state's plan, whatever the inputs, the requirement inputs that were made to come up with the plan that they have, do not seem to be based on local need, because an important element of what you put in your report here has to do with local need and local opportunity, and those seem to be those are important, and I don't find them in the state's plan.
Pete, if I may jump in here, I think that the state is building where it can. Okay, if you want to look for kind of state-of-the-art paths right now, actually DCR has it. I don't know what's happened to the National Seashore, but they've fallen off quite a bit. So for them, they're looking like, where can we go, right? So they're going to use right-of-ways that they have. And that's where
agreed.
If we want them to do something in Wellfleet, I'm not sure they'd be opposed to that, but they need help to get those rights of ways, right? If you want to take it up the power lines, which is fine, because that's just a continuation of the path, right? Those right of ways have to be secured. And for them, that's hard to do without some local support, right? So I'm not necessarily critical of DCR here. I just think that they don't have reach into this community. What they understand is, you know, you give them a plan, they bring out some bulldozers and asphalt thingies and they pave it. And that's what they know how to do. So if we want that, that's okay. But I suspect we'll have to help them do the setup for it so that they can digest it in a way that's kind of more familiar to their particular process.
And no, that's a fair point. And I wasn't singling out DCR because clearly they have their own rights of way that that led to the rail trail, which a lot of people see as an example of what could exist and as something to emulate. You know, when we're talking about the state's plan, you know, at this point we can talk about the integrated planning that's done by a number of agencies that ultimately appear to lead to a bikeway along Route 6, and discussion among the state agencies that who are intent on continuing a bikeway along Route 6 beyond Wellfleet. Beyond Wellfleet.
It's not a bikeway. I mean, I ride on Route 6 twice a week. And right now we can talk about that when there's another point of safety issues, because I have 3 or 4 I'd like to mention to you. But Route 6 is a deadly dangerous place to ride. Okay, to be out there riding on 6, and I don't like it, and I'm a good rider, okay? And I have a truck passing me at 60 miles an hour, 3 feet off my left hand. No, that is not a bikeway, that's a highway, right? So that's not, no human being should be out there biking if they can avoid it. That's a dangerous place to ride and you can get killed out there. So, you know, but we need to have bike routes that are, you know, suitable for normal, well, there are different kinds of bike routes, but at a minimum, you need to have bike routes where you can go out without the expectation of taking your life in your hands, right?
And of course, the Department of Transportation will say, well, of course, we don't want children next to speeding trucks. We're going to put lanes in separate from the road. They'll just be alongside Route 6. However, that of course doesn't address any of the other difficulties in putting a bikeway alongside a highway, and you know that goes to comfort level for the users. There still are inherent safety issues, but and when we're talking comfort, we're not talking things that are to be taken lightly. I mean, noise levels, pollution levels. I mean, there have been studies done indicating that the air along those roadways is unhealthy.
It's not suitable.
So there are all these considerations to take into account too, that, you know, ultimately point to an off-highway solution as being desired.
I mean, I think, Peter, you know, ultimately the dual purpose, I mean, I think DOT is going to put in the lanes on the highway. And as an experienced rider, if you can clean up, because the worst part of Route 6 right now is the breakdown lane parts of it. There's areas in front of Dunkin' Donuts and around there that's just super dangerous. And I'm a super experienced rider, and I feel uncomfortable as hell, like Peter's saying. That's one of the few times I ever feel like, holy shit, this is really on the edge. So that'll be way better, but it's still never going to be, like you said, between the pollution, the noise, and, you know, it just isn't going to be suitable for families to be out there with all that traffic in the summer anyway. And it's not nearly as beautiful as what we could get if we could get something through it. So, I mean, again, ideally, if we could get DCR to do something and then DOT to still do their lanes on the road, that would be the perfect situation. I'm just afraid they're going to take the easy way out and just say, you got the highway, you're all set.
Well, so it depends on what area we're talking about. Just to clarify, I don't want to run away with this meeting too much, but so for me, the area I'm specifically referring to is north of Grosse Hill Road to Provincetown. Okay,
Mhm.
that's high speed, dangerous stuff. Within the town of Wellfleet, and there's some issues there at LeConte, we're going to have problems with that in the summer, but within the town of Wellfleet, right, you do have options. You can go Grosse Hill or Long Pond or LeConte and over to Ocean View, so you can't avoid it. But I'm referring north of Grosse Hill Road, where we don't really have any options right now. I mean, if you want to go out Gull Pond Road, but north out of Gull Pond Road, you're pretty much cooked till you get to Collins Road, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. In fact, Steve, yeah, as you were describing riding along Route 6, I had this mental picture of that area actually leading from Wellfleet to Truro, which is of course a key area, and one that we tried, addressed as we were doing a suitability study looking for options. There was one final point I noted in your study. I mean, this was a key one, in the impact to adjacent homeowners. Looking at our alternatives to going along what we've discussed here as a, obviously unsatisfactory route in so many ways to continue along the highway. If we're looking at other options, this is a narrow peninsula. So where do we go? And you addressed, I thought, that in an interesting way, looking at the frequency of the visibility of cyclists to adjacent homeowners. And of course, one of the goals one of our objectives in our study was to minimize impact on adjacent property owners.
Yeah.
And we looked at it from a lot of different angles. Impossible to completely eliminate the visibility of a bike trail from every house in Wellfleet, but what one can do is attempt to optimize the design of a bike trail and the location to minimize negative impacts. But then your report, I think, does a good job explaining what do we mean by impact.
Yeah.
So, yeah, do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you looked at the videos, right? So that's the horror that I showed you. So if those people filled you with horror on those videos, then you're going to feel horror seeing them out your back. But the truth is, they're just mostly middle-aged people and people with kids, and they either live here or they vacation here, right? They're the same people you see at the beach, the same people you see at still Lima's. We know it's Wellfleet Marketplace, but really it's still Lima's. And it's exactly the same people. And even a lot of people, and you can take 300 people an hour on a path and it doesn't look very full. And that's a lot of people. So yeah, I did it specifically really from the homeowner's perspective, right? Should we be terrified of these things? The other thing is, I mean, you're looking at, there will be times a day when you see people from 11 until 3 o'clock, but most people aren't sitting on their decks that time of day anyway, right? They're out biking or swimming or whatever. Other than that, it's not going to be terrible. And of course, it's very seasonal. So I don't think it's a disaster from a homeowner's point of view. Mostly those paths, you can't see it because most people have bushes or something at the edge of the property, a fence. So you don't really see the path that much. You may see the bikers going by, but it's not terrible. The other thing is it's a really nice asset. I mean, if you like, we can take a look at the impact of bike paths on home values, but I'm going to guess it's a positive number. And, I'm down on the bike path all the time. We were down, I guess 2 days ago down in Eastham. And, it's like, oh man, this is so nice. You mean you can come out of your backyard and get on the bike path and go wherever you want, and that's like, wow, that's pretty cool. I'd like to have that. So I think the answer is, first, the traffic will be less in Wellfleet than south of Wellfleet for the reasons I enumerated. So it's not going to be that bad. Second, you can accommodate a lot of bikers. It still doesn't look like that many. And the third is, I mean, it's really nice to have this. I mean, if you had a bike path here, you realize that you could get on your bike and go straight to Pamet to Ballston Beach without getting on a road, right? Or you could go all the way down to, I don't want to say all the way to Chatham, but you can go, Harwich, wherever, I mean, really far south without ever having to get on a road. So it's a hugely nice asset to have if you can get it. So I think that I think it's a nice thing to have. It's something that by rights we should, there really should be a path that goes all the way through to Provincetown. Okay, that's not like a scary, unreasonable thing. That would be a normal thing for Cape Cod to develop, to have that, because it would be a good asset for both us here and for the greater community.
Well, and for the state, that's why they're investing so much money. There is a lot of money out there right now for this very purpose, all over the country, but especially in the state. So
Let's go get it. If you need
Yeah.
help, I'll help you go get it. I know how to write proposals. You know,
Good.
I mean, we have to make some decisions about what we want to do. And we can do sort of master plan type stuff where you're going, okay, it's going to be a DCR trail, DCR standard, and we're going to go and get however many signatures we need, or eminent domain it, or whatever the hell we need to get the right of way up the utility line, right? And that's one way to do, or we can do incremental stuff. And which makes things a little bit better, a little bit safer. You know, there are ways to do that too. So they're big things and small things that solve different problems. Yeah, we can do it. It's not, you know.
well, and
One-
just
one-
maybe, oh, go ahead, Ned.
Well, I was just thinking, how do you propose to do the incremental aspect of it?
Okay, so let me tell you some problems that are I've noted just riding around. So I can see the DCR guys have their asphalt equipment out again. So I'm not sure what they're asphalting again, but I can tell you it's almost certainly not the part they've already asphalted. So something's going to get asphalted.
Yeah.
The way that the trail extension goes up now north of Lacan Hollow is that it ends up at the campground, right? So that means if you get there, either you turn around or you go through the campground, which is also paved, newly paved asphalt.
Nicely done. Yeah.
Yes, nicely done. So, right. So first of all, now you're in some sense trespassing, but okay, let's say that's the way the water flows. And then that brings you out into Old County Road, right?
Yeah.
From there, you turn right, and that takes you up to Lacan Hollow, right? Then you turn left on Lacan Hollow, and you come down to the light by the cemetery. And then your impulse is going to be, oh my God, what am I doing here? Because the right turn from there is no shoulder, 2 lanes of traffic, and it's going to be thick, right? In the summer. So that's like a disaster waiting to happen. It will happen. But you could do a bypass in the cemetery right next to it. You can actually put a gravel path right next to the fence, because there's this white gravel in there. I actually have a picture of this. You can tell that I'm a really market kind of guy, because I'm the sort of person who goes out there and actually takes the photos. But there, I can show it to you in photos if you like. And you could put a gravel path just inside the fence in the cemetery, which brings you out kind of the pharmacy parking lot or the exit to the cemetery. And that would at least bring people up to the light at Main Street, right? So at least you take them away from that LeConte Route 6 intersection, which is going to be an abject disaster and it's very dangerous. And people won't know that they're in danger until they get there, right? So that's a little thing. That's maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 days work for 3 or 4 guys, $5,000 or $6,000 worth of gravel. I don't know what it is. It's not a huge thing, right? It can be done. It's not perfect. It's not, you know, but it would take people off of that corner. Okay, so that's a small thing. That's an example of a small project you could do that helps people. You know.
Okay, well, thanks, Steve. Can I want to go back to a comment because I think it's important to caution. You mentioned eminent domain along the power lines, and we have not advocated eminent domain or taking anything like that, taking any action. So in case anybody's looking at the recording of this meeting, I want to make that clear.
We'll take that disclaimer. I'm just telling you, those are different things you could.
The other thing is there are alternatives to doing that. I mean, and this is where a partnership with the National Seashore would be important, because when we were surveying and assessing potential segments of trails that would go through perhaps where there's a property boundary between the National Seashore and say the utility lines. If you were to inset the bikeway 50 feet into the National Seashore, you could do so in a way that clearly doesn't disrupt the National Seashore, which is, of course, quite a bit larger than 50 feet. They're not going to notice the 50 feet, but would obscure the trail from property owners who are living on the other side of the utility line. And so we were those things, though, we also didn't advocate taking national seashore land, but we see this as an area where we do need to have some caucusing, some negotiation between the local community, the state, and the seashore. I mean, there's an opportunity here that needs to be explored.
Yeah, I think that I guess my instinctual view of the national seashore is we better have something to trade. Okay, so
take a minute to I do think that you just gave us another resource, another tool to give people information, and what we can do now is just keep looking at and saying, is this what people want? Because we're not trying to push through anything that people don't want, but it would be really amazing to have some way of measuring what it seems like this is in the best interest of the vast majority of the community. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for figuring out, well, what does the vast majority of people here want? And how can we make that happen? So, if you get down to the nitty gritty and say, oh, so we've got two choices here. We've got knocking down some trees, but having privacy for these homeowners, or we have going on the power line and saving the trees. And so we could really we have as much information as we can get so that we can assess what people want. I wish there was a way of really understanding, because I do see that we bump up against some combat from people, but I think it's a small handful, and I think we are representing the majority of people. I know it would mean the world to any kid in this town to have a path. And I know we travel based on towns with bike paths, so I also think we bring lovely people here. So,
in that regard, I mean, if you want to do seashore, if you want to do left or right of the power lines, okay, then the select board has to say, we'd like you to see what you can do about setting that up, right? Someone has to stand up and say, yes, we would like you to examine this option and that option, right? Or just one. And then you need to go knock on doors. I mean, you're literally going to have to go household by household. First, you have to determine what permission you need for them, but you're going to have to, do knock on doors, and you're going to have to talk to people and suss them out. It's just legwork, right? It's not deep rocket science, but you can't just you're going to have to actually talk to everybody and see what they say.
I still think the best option, though, is we
lost you, Ned.
The seashore, because they that's our best.
I'll be right back. Excuse me.
They seem to be really dragging their feet, though, as far as letting us do anything. But
here, so let me give you an example, right? Someone donated 5 acres to Truro. I think it was acres that they're giving to the seashore or something, right? So Wellfleet could say, oh, we'll take 2 of those acres. We'll buy 2 of those acres off you, and we'll give them to the National Seashore if you trade us a right of way, right? So that's what I mean by trades, and then that affects how you do your budgeting and all that sort of stuff. But I think that my personal sense is, if we want to talk to the seashore, this sort of, you should be nice to us because we're Wellfleet. I don't know. I'm a little skeptical about that.
Well, they want people to enjoy nature too. So maybe, that's a shared goal, and we need to really reach for that. But what I'm
go get a couple of acres. Go buy a couple of acres.
I
hand it to them and say,
that,
we'll trade you this for that.
Yeah, but they seem to be really hung up on the archaeological digs that are along Old Kings Highway there. And I don't know, that last couple bits we got from Karlstrom there, he seems like no way they're going to do anything. But I think we have to keep pushing them, keep working them. Yeah, if we can horse trade with them, great, But
I would anticipate that this will be decided in Washington and not on Cape Cod.
Yes.
So you're going to have to work a Washington angle if you want it. And you're going to have to have some allies and friends.
Steve, I think you're got a good perspective on this thing. In that it's not something that's going to necessarily be, who knows where it will lead, but we need to be prepared to take this where it needs to go. And it may not be just down the street.
Board has to say, make it so, right? They have to, at this point, give someone a mandate to say whatever option that you guys think is the one you prefer to do, or the board has to say, okay, let's see what it takes to make that happen.
So our committee has an advisory role to the select board. And of course, we provided our report to them. We also have provided information, some in the report, but a lot out of the report, pointing toward funding sources and federal programs to encourage the kind of route planning that we're talking about here, route development. And we made a number of recommendations in our report to the select board. The select board ultimately speaks for the town, sets policy for the town, and in that sense directs the town government. So yes, we all have, this is a challenge we need to address as best we can, recognizing that the select board is ultimately the representative of the town in working with the state and with the federal agencies.
And it's a lot of work, and I can't imagine, it's like how to jump to the next step is really tricky. I wonder first of all, I wonder if you would want me to publish your report as an attachment in our minutes.
Sure.
Would be a nice
If it's helpful to you, that's great.
What does everyone else think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's important that we it would be useful to get the information out. Honestly, I look at it as we're sharing important information with our neighbors. Okay. I think we need to make a distinction. It's not a committee report, right. But it was a report that's been provided to us by a Wellfleet resident, and in that spirit, that's been our spirit all along, and that is taking inputs from the community, from residents. And so again, Steve, thank you.
Sure.
And it just highlights the fact that we have an interesting community, and it's intellectually diverse, and we have a lot of capabilities in this town, and it's great that people can put those capabilities to use to benefit our community.
Yeah, those pros are all like retired New York lawyers and corporate guys, and you have some horsepower lying around here if you care to go after it.
Well, I'd like to go after, the voice of people who have been here forever too. So I was just thinking, I wonder, we have done the report and we have sent these proposals, and the select board is doing such a wonderful job with so much work for the town. Is there something that is really hard about figuring out what the next step is? What could we do to help continue to be supportive and really helpful to get to the next step? I wonder if people have ideas, or if we want to do a survey of year-round residents for starters, or if we want to consider talking to the second homeowners association, starting to, I don't know. I just wonder what we can do to be very helpful so that we can figure out what's next,
Yeah, so if I can toss in my 2 cents. First, I'm a consultant. I've presented things to boards for a long time, so I have a very low opinion of boards. Boards can say basically yes or no. You never want to let a board choose anything, right? So yes or no, and that's that. And it's not, boards are institutionally incompetent. They're not incompetent as individuals, but institutionally. And the reason is particularly the select board, just to pick one, they have a lot of different projects that are on their plate all the time. And these guys are ostensibly just part-time, right? So for them to get focus on different things, it's very difficult for them to decide something. It's easier for them to say yes or no, right? So what I think the committee can do is put the board and say, one, do you want a bike path? Yes or no. That's really simple, because if we don't want a bike path, then we're not going anywhere. The second is,
we also, sorry to interrupt, but we could say here's what the residents of the town say about, because they're just trying to represent the town the best they can, and they get a lot of voices. So maybe we could help them by saying, here's what the town members say. You guys do a great job representing them, so we thought we'd find out. Well, here's how many people want this. Here's what their top priority is for it. Here's how many people don't. They feel very strongly. You probably know them really well. They've reached out to you, you know.
Yeah. My impulse would be to be more proactive and just say, the committee has sat down, we've looked at things, and we think the best option, left side or right side. Okay. And that's fine. There are other ways to do it. You want to do it that way, it's consistent with DCR. Now, we'd like the board's approval to either do one or another, right? And then let us go at it and start putting it together in a coherent form. So if you say the left side, right, then you have those rights of ways and the power lines and Eversource and whatever the hell that is. I mean, that's quite a bit of work just to understand what the problem is. Forget the solution, right? To understand, well, I'm not even clear on who owns the right of way and who can do that stuff, right? So just getting that would be a next step. So the board to say, you know, tee it up, or tee up, how does the National Seashore work? Who approves that? What's that process? You know, that whole thing. And then you have to have bodies. You know, one of the things I can tell you that I can see that's missing in general, not only in Wellfleet, but in Cape Cod, is that what we have typically are administrative personnel. We don't have project personnel. So if, you know, this sort of thing, normally you'd have somebody that you sign to and sometimes even pay them and say, okay, your job is now, you're the project manager for this deliverable, you know, which is doing the legwork. I mean, you can do it by committee, but it can be a lot of work and asking a lot from volunteers, right, to do that. But anyway, so picking one or the other and then start teeing it up. And as you start teeing it up, then you can start asking people's opinions, right? So it's hard. The problem with getting people's opinions, if they don't have a firm idea of what you're talking about, right? It's difficult for them to formulate an opinion, and it's easy to oppose. So, okay, I'm talking way too much here. So, but I think put something to the committee. We'd like to do that. We want to approve that, and then let's get some bodies against that and start teeing up a specific alternative. Not, you know, you've done the generic stuff, okay, and now let's pick one of those, develop that.
So in our, we are at a point where there's a gap in terms of getting action, and you've been a lot of discussion here about the select board and, you know, administrative versus project management, and that's an interesting point, Steve. That you know, to take action here, we perhaps need a different setup. We made a number of recommendations to the select board in our report. I think there were 7 that were specific regarding routes, but then there, you know, ways to develop a route. But then there were, I believe, if I recall the count, 10 that were purely organizational action. It was recommendations. You should, you need to get such and such a study from DOT, which they promised and didn't deliver, that sort of thing. And there were a number of actions. One of them, another one was, we recommended that the town designate a point of contact to deal with DOT and DCR to be a conduit of information for the select board, because there was a real information fog that had developed, and that's probably the nicest way to put it. We needed somebody who could help clear that, so that the town was getting good information and getting information it could act on. So there was just a couple of recommendations. It certainly, you know, the idea of having a project manager within the town to pursue a bikeway, something like that. I mean, that's definitely, you know, that's on the plate for the select board to consider.
Okay, so let me now abuse my microphone even more. So one of the interesting things about these project management roles is that they can be quite intermittent, right? So if you want to do a bike path, right, you'll have 3 weeks of intense work, and then for 6 months, it'll be like tending the fires, right? And so that I think there is a role for people who are engaged over a long period of time, but not necessarily continuously every day, right? Because sometimes you go months without much happening, right? But you still have to tend the fires. So, and bike paths are not the only topic. I mean, I could go topic after topic after topic where we have committees that bring up stuff, and then there's this gap between the administrative layer and the committee, right? But you need some people in there who are kind of tending the fires over a period of time, where sometimes it's intense and sometimes you're putting in, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours a month, right? So that it's not quite the same project management as we would have in, an engineering project or something. It's a little different type thing. In any event, okay, I'll stop there.
No, and well, good point. It's also important to note that the state agencies, of course, do have professional project managers on these projects, which they're funding currently, or planning and executing within Wellfleet. And so at a minimum, one would think that the town should have an active liaison with those programs to understand how they're impacting the town and to provide some influence. And we're not there certainly yet. That's the select board is the town's point of contact with those state agencies.
Right.
They also have other touch points within the town government, and the extent to which they report to the select board, one could debate. That's a different topic, but yeah.
What is our last update from the state right now? Like, what is exactly what's happening?
Well, the last update from the state to the town,
Mm-hmm.
unknown. Yeah, I mean, their communication link is with our town administrator and our select board.
Okay.
So if
So wonder,
Yes, that's not optimal.
maybe
that is not optimal.
a good time to reach out and ask, do we want to ask and say, hey, when was the last time you were gotten in touch with? What can we do to help?
Yeah, I mean, there are other, not to get philosophical, but yeah, bureaucracies, complicated bureaucracies become that way in part as a defense mechanism. And I think what we have here is a complicated state bureaucracy that has multiple forums. And for instance, there are a number that are related to the Cape Cod Commission, in which these agencies report information, and our town government sits in those meetings. And so it becomes a situation where there's a lot of talking going on about these things, but if you're not at the right meeting, you might miss an important point. So our town tries to engage these different forums as it can. The question, I think, though, what we're talking here is more simple, and that is, what is the state agency telling our town government?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, that's certainly because we're an advisory committee, although we have made overtures to the select board to keep us engaged. We can do that again. Sure.
Yeah, because I mean, we all had a term where we drifted off a little bit, and I need to be rehooked in, and maybe they have a similar situation. So
Yeah, I agree with you there, Christy, too, because I think that's a lot of the DCR's plan, is that they're going to just say, well, we gave you guys a couple years, we didn't do anything, and nothing's happened, so we're just going to stick to our original plan, and bang, this is it, we're taking it out to the highway. So I do think it's really important that because I feel the same way. I feel like we put some work in last year, and then all of a sudden we got to a point, well, it's up to the select board. So we just have sat back and waited, and they obviously don't seem to be engaged. And I think we're just leaving it wide open for DCR to take the easy way out. So,
or maybe they are engaged. We don't know. That maybe they've done something so we could find out,
Boards are all institutionally incompetent.
Well,
That's
let's not
just
make
a-
broad sweeping statements.
No, it's just,
You're
I mean,
talking about our neighbors, so I just want to keep
no,
it.
and I'm not talking about
neighborly.
personally incompetent.
All right.
Institutionally. If you take a look, Ryan Curley, okay, Ryan Curley probably should have a statue erected to him, right?
Okay.
I don't know how hard he's working. He has to be working incredibly hard, and he has to make a living for his family too, right? And he has so many complicated things. Just getting the town's finances in order, right, is a huge undertaking.
Mhm.
And so he
Going
doesn't
on.
have bandwidth to take on things to digest. You can ask him yes or no. Ryan, this is our expert recommendation. We would like you to approve it, right? That may be something you can go on. But if you lean back and say, well, here are 30 options, they
But it's
can't
still-
digest it. They just can't handle the complexity.
Yeah, and it's also still very complicated. There's still a lot of unanswered questions about the complexity of each alternative path. So
Well, let's be clear on what we did. We provided a report to we assessed suitable, we were looking at, are there suitable alternatives to what the state is doing? And our report concluded, yes, there are. There are options that are much better than the state's. They need to be pursued. And what the intention of the report was, not for it to be shelfware, but for us to provide it to the select board so that they would have information available to them. So when they're engaging the state agencies, which is part of their job, that they would have that information. We also did in our recommendations offer that, Steve's made some points about, how different, how boards can be constrained in their ability to deal with the situation because just by nature. And we said, well, let's designate a point of contact to deal with the state agencies on this. And they chose not to. So
yeah, don't be afraid to be assertive, right? You're the experts. You're the guys who've looked at it, spent the time with it. You're the experts. Say what you want, right? And make it easy for them. Because they can say no. You can say, we're the experts. We've done the work. This is our recommendation. If you want to vote no, it's on you, right? But they can't. It's hard. They just can't do it institutionally to work through a significant menu of options where they need to be engaged with the topic and make a judgment.
and that's why we have a professional full-time town government too. So the select board isn't having to run the town government, but we have certainly within the town government tools for the town, and whether or not they're all engaged. Another topic.
Yeah, see, the town government, again, we come back to the project management, town government is well suited to doing day-to-day tasks, right? Their routine is what naturally comes to them. And it's relatively harder for them to do non-routine stuff
right now. Yeah.
And
I do have to just put in that I do need to go to work soon. I don't know about you, Ned.
I'm sorry. I'll pass
yeah.
it.
actually,
Okay, I'm sorry too.
So I actually had a hard stop at 10 and it's 10:01 because I've got to go. I have an appointment I need to do. But Steve, no, I mean, we've had a very informal discussion here about things that are far reaching, but you know, your report, which thank you again for providing to us, you know, kind of opened the door to a discussion. And as we can all see, this could lead to hours of discussion, and there are a lot of these are not simple issues. Anybody listening to this should, you know, a takeaway should be that they haven't heard an official committee opinion expressed on these things. And we're not, this is a bit of, you know, informal discussion of complicated issues that sometimes just needs to take place so people can wrap their head around things. But
it was a real fresh perspective. So thanks, Steve. And
yeah,
I would welcome any other town member too to bring in their fresh perspective, because truthfully, we had slowed down and that was very inspiring. So thank you.
Sure. If you read this stuff, I will send you a couple of other things on, you know, we have 2 or 3 relatively important safety issues coming up, and I'll send you, I don't want to keep you guys have to go. I'll send you something in writing.
Your expertise too, Steve. That's really great. I know it's a lot of time you had to put in on that, and it's been super helpful.
Good. I'm glad it helped.
Moving on the agenda so that we can conclude here. Christy, do we have minutes for the January 13th
We
meeting?
have minutes, yes, and I actually have them completely done, but I didn't realize I did not email them to you. I can email them right now, or I could share the screen.
Actually, I really do have a hard stop. I don't have any option. If you could send those, I would, I suppose we could make a motion to approve the minutes with any comments that we need to provide to you.
Absolutely.
If you would
I'll take
incorporate,
everyone.
but I believe that if I recall our last meeting, there shouldn't be anything too controversial from that meeting.
They're very straightforward, but there are 4 attachments that I think are very useful for people to see. So,
and I think it would be good to have those posted online so people can see what we're looking at. Good. Okay. So can we approve the minutes conditional upon any correction, typographical corrections, those sorts of things? Ned?
I approve.
Okay, well, we'll make it unanimous then. Any other business that we should discuss?
I guess we could set a next meeting time, or we can do that over email too.
I think we need to, we'll need
Yeah.
to look at the calendar. I mean, we can, I think that there are, a lot of variables right now that we ought to consider. We have select board changeover that's taken place, and we have more to come with a special election coming up. So exciting times.
Peter, do you have any idea as to the new select board members, as to their opinion on the bike trail? I don't know anything about about either of the new ones.
Not specifically, no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I do know, I mean, there's I mean, I know we have additional candidates for the seat that's coming open for the next election as well. So reserve comment on that as well. But, as candidates were running in this last campaign, yes, some of them did reach out to better understand the issue and, provided them information so that they'd be aware, a lot of it, publicly available, copy of our report, some background on how the issue came up, where the fact that there has been a lot of communication with the select board, a nearly unanimous town vote where people said, we don't like the state's plan and we want them to pause while we look at alternatives, things like that. So, candidates were informed with that before the election.
Yeah.
Okay, unless there's anything else, I really do need to go.
Yeah, let's do
But
it.
do we, so no other business? Thank you, everybody, for being here. Again, thanks, Steve, for taking time to join us
Thank
this
you.
morning. And thanks for your work. Okay. Then meeting adjourned.
All right.
Yeah.
Unless we need a motion, I don't think we do. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, guys.